Hi, I'm Luke. I just graduated from Lancaster University in July. I interviewed a lovely gentleman called Michael Longworth, and he told me his story about being adopted from a very young age and his endeavour to find his birth mother. Michael's story is a truly heartwarming story which echoes the situation of many adoptees throughout the UK who search for their biological parents and struggle in doing so. Michael summarises his story perfectly by saying it's a wonderful story with a happy ending from a sad start.
Well, I'm Mike, I'm 60 years of age and I live in Lancaster. I was born at Bretta Holt, which isn't far from Lancaster. I was born there in 1952. I was adopted. My mother lived in Liverpool and she was 32 when she became pregnant with me. I don't know who my father is, but my mother's parents were very, very strict Catholics. And unbeknown to me, I don't know how my mother got pregnant, but it came to a decision that she was told that either I went or she went. And from that moment on, I was transferred from Liverpool to Bretta Holt, which was an unmarried mother's home in the 1950s, just on the way to Kendal. I was taken there 6 weeks before I was born, and I stayed 6 weeks after. And, when I left there, I was taken back to Liverpool, and I was taken to Hope, Father McHugh's children's home in Liverpool. And there I stayed till I was 3.5. And I was eventually adopted by a family from Altrincham near Manchester. And that was my stepmother, my stepfather and a stepbrother. As I say, I got there when I was 3.5, and then 11 months later I went out and I was stood at a bus stop with my stepmother, and apparently, unbeknown to me, she took ill, and I never saw my mother again. She died from a brain hemorrhage, my stepmother. So at the age of 5.5 I'd had 2 mothers and really never knew neither of them, you know. So I was brought up with my stepfather and my stepbrother, and with aunties. They had their own business. So I was shipped out to aunties and people looked after me, and when I went to school I came home and stayed at people's houses till they came home from work. And while I was with my adopted parents, I was always asked many a time, would I try and find my real mother? I always said to my father or to my step-parents that no, while they were alive I would never try and find my mother.
Right.
In 1997 I lost my stepfather. I then decided that through the Catholic Adoption Society that I would try and trace my mother. We'd been a Catholic, you had to go through certain things to find out whether my mum wanted to see me. It took me about 3 or 4 years, and every time I went and the decision I got was, no, your mother doesn't want to see you.
Right.
You know, try again later and everything. I tried all sorts, really hard work. And in the end, I was that fed up. I got on a train and I went to Birkenhead and I went to the electoral list. And there was only 2 Rosemary Bennetts on the electoral list. One had a family and the other lady lived alone. Right. And I actually went to the house and knocked on the door. And I first met my mother in 2001. Right. And she nearly collapsed when she saw me. But the first words out of her mouth was, I always knew you'd come and find me. And she said, I never ever forgot your birthday on the 17th of January.
How did that make you feel at the time?
I was absolutely shocked. I was shaking. I was more nervous than my mother.
I can imagine.
You know. But I went in and we sat down, and by the time we both got over our nerves, we'd had a cup of tea. And I kept in touch with my mother for quite a while. I used to write to her and I used to ring her. Yeah. And then apparently one day I went down, or I rang her, and there was nobody in, and I went down to see her. And the lady next door said that she'd been walking down the streets late at night in just a night dress. And somebody at social services had said to her, would she go into this home, see how she liked it. If she liked it, then she could stay, and if she didn't, she was allowed to go back home. But she stayed in that home until the day she died. So I eventually found out the home she was in, which was at Feltree House in Rock Ferry. Right. And I came home and I rang Feltree House, and I had to explain for 2 hours to the matron that I was Rosemary's son, because they didn't have any record of her having any children. And it was awful trying to explain. You know, you're trying to tell somebody the truth and you don't feel they believe you. And I went on for ages, and she said, the best thing I can do, Michael, is leave it with me. I'll have a word with your mother, Rosemary, tomorrow, and I'll ring you back in a day or two. So she rang me back about 3 days later. I said that my mother had broke her heart, and she told the matron that she did have a son, and she would love to see me.
Yeah.
So I eventually went to the home where she was and met her again. And then one day I got a phone call from the home to say that they were taking her up to Marrow Park Hospital and she wasn't well.
Right.
I rushed down to the home, and as she was taken out on the stretcher, she handed me an envelope with £75 in £5 notes. And I said, what was this for, Mother? And she said, it's for petrol to come and see me. You want to come and see me? Which I found very strange. And at the time it didn't really bother me, but I thought, did she know that she wasn't going to come out of hospital? Many strange things, I don't know. So I eventually went to the hospital, and I went nearly every day to see her. I stayed with her. She used to wink at me, but she never ever said anything to me, and all the time she was in hospital she never spoke. She just winked at me, smile. And on the 11th of July I went to see her, and I was sat with her and she didn't look well at all. And the nurse said to me, Michael, you better go home, go and get a rest, come back tomorrow and you can see her tomorrow. I set off from there because I lived at Carnforth in Lancashire, Lancaster. And by the time I walked in the door I got a phone call to say, you better get back, don't think your mother's going to make it. By the time I got in the car, I got a phone call about a mile up the road to say she passed away. So by the time I got to the hospital, she passed away. And the lady in the next bed said the last word she ever uttered was, Mike, where's my Mike? You know. And since then, you know, my life, I've had many doubts about what happened to my mother. I wasn't happy with the way she was treated. Because on the death certificate there was absolutely nothing wrong with her. And I put it down to she just starved herself to death. But the lady in the next bed did say to me that she wished in many ways that she'd never met me. I'd sort of like blamed myself for a long time that if I hadn't gone to see her or I hadn't found her, would she have lived happy a bit longer in the home herself, you know. And when I went to the hospital I asked about the way she was treated, and the last words they said to me as I came out that I was partly to blame for getting in touch with my mother, which I found horrendous. And for a long time after that I suffered with a lot of guilt, a lot of remorse and a lot of thinking, you know, was it my fault?
Yeah.
And I ended up having counselling, you know. And over the last few years I've come now to accept that what happened to my mum, she wanted to happen anyway. I don't hold any blame on me. I'm just glad that I did see her. You know, my life's been a jigsaw, and like meeting my mum was just part of putting the jigsaw back together.
Definitely.
You know. So that's my story, you know, an interesting way of being adopted, you know,
Definitely.
not knowing anything, and then wait until 40 odd years later to find out,
Putting it all together.
put it back all together again, you know. But it's a wonderful story,
It is.
you know, it has a happy ending from a soft start, and I think at last I found a bit of peace in my life.